Gunko's a celestial dragon, right? That's what volume 112 tells us. Saint title, man, mayor, family name, the whole package. But the flashbacks don't add up. No bubble helmet, no weird dick-shaped hair, no astronaut drip. So what if she wasn't born into power? What if she was made into it? Because that opens up a way darker possibility, one that connects her to Kuma. Let's get into it. So if Gunko was born a celestial dragon, the story isn't doing much to show it, and maybe that's the point. The more we look at the visual storytelling around our character through the flashback panels near the end of chapter 1149, the more the pieces feel kind of out of place. For someone supposedly born into the highest rank of royal government nobility, her past seems surprisingly ordinary for a celestial dragon. Sure, there isn't that much visual detail in the flashback since Oda is deliberately keeping Gunko's history a mystery. Still, it's pretty clear so far that she's not dripped out in the celestial dragon iconography like the white robes, the bubble buddy helmets, the weird hair thing that's oddly shaped like a dick. So I think it's fair to say that based on those flashback panels revealing her past, she led a fairly normal, or at least noble life that doesn't even compare to that of a celestial dragon. Maybe she was a princess in the kingdom where Brook served as the leader of its battle convoy, or held some other noble title. Which brings us to something One Piece does a lot: using titles and nicknames that don't always match who a character really is or where they come from, and that's not by accident. Oda often uses this as a storytelling tool. Sometimes it's because of misinformation, alternative facts, the "my truth is more factual than the actual truth" sentiment. The world government loves handing out titles based on fear or propaganda, and they might label someone a major threat, not because they are, but because it helps push their fascist agenda. On the other hand, some characters do lean into their reputations, whether it's earned or not, because it helps them with their clout chasing. Some characters have troubled pasts they hide, and public titles only show their current role, not their actual struggles. For example, Kuma's nickname, the Tyrant, was imposed, revealing nothing about who he truly is. So in One Piece, titles are usually masks, self-made or forced, that hide or mislead. The story reveals characters' true selves over time. It also relates to one of One Piece's darker recurring themes: how people are turned into weapons, often against their will. Kids, giants, pirates, slaves, no one is spared. If they can be used, they will be. And the best example of the story is slavery under the Celestial Dragons, which strips people of everything: their identity, their freedom, their humanity. They're used as their masters see fit. Why dirty your own hands when you can outsource your hate and bigotry to the very people you enslaved and dehumanized? It's a win-win situation, the fucked up kind. So when I see a character like Gunko who has this elite title but doesn't actually have the usual background story that comes with it, I just gotta ask, was she born into that life, or was she heavily encouraged into it? That's when the story of Bartholomew Kuma comes crashing into the frame. Kuma wasn't born a servant of the Celestial Dragons. He was turned into one. Twice. Once as a child because of his buccaneer heritage, grounds enough for the world government to throw him and his family into what's basically the alligator Auschwitz lifestyle. And again, as an adult, he sacrificed his body to save Bonnie, to become a mindless cyborg. Both times, he didn't choose it. The first involved a young Kuma, powerless, trapped, and treated like property. The second, same thing, but it's the love for his daughter that turned him into a weapon against him. It's this very pattern, the manufacturing of obedience and the complete unraveling of one's sense of self by no means of their own choice, that causes me to reconsider Gunko and think, wait a goddamn minute. We still don't know how she became a God's Knight, how celestial dragons end up becoming one anyways, and despite her updated title, we have zero proof that she rose to power through privilege. The lack of detail on top of those flashback panels makes me assume that some really dark shit went down with Gunko to get her to where she is now. I mean, good lord, she's living a fabricated life with no memory of her old life. So maybe Gunko isn't a true celestial dragon by blood. Perhaps she was made into one. And if that's the case, then she and Kuma aren't just similar, they might be mirrors of the same system. This is where my tinfoil hat levels up into a tinfoil helmet, based on a recurring pattern in One Piece: the commodification of human value. In simpler terms, One Piece consistently shows us how people, especially children, are turned into tools, not always by villains, but by the systems in power. And this framing occurs repeatedly. Like I pretty much alluded to, Kuma is a prime example of this because his body was physically and mentally altered to serve the government, first as a child, then as a pacifista prototype, and later as a premium living subscription service for the Celestial Dragons. Neither role was voluntary, but Kuma isn't the only case. The Punk Hazard children, they were kidnapped and lied to. Caesar Clown told them that their parents would get sick if they went home. Then Caesar tested crack cocaine in the form of Halloween candy on them to force giantification. Their lives were reduced to a science fair project. Then Smoke Judge raised his children as weapons. Their personalities were erased, and their bodies were engineered for combat. Sanji was the only one who resisted, and the rest were treated like assets, though they were treated better than Sanji, but by the end of the day, they were nothing but tools for Judge's nefarious purposes. Big Mom used her children the strength of her power. She arranged marriages and alliances, using them as chess pieces to appear on 90 Day Fiancé. The point isn't that each case is identical, it's that the core logic repeats. The state or those with power find ways to reduce people into something usable. And that logic might extend to Gunko. Look at her name. Gunko means child of war, a label that at minimum could suggest someone shaped by conflict. And this doesn't have to mean physical fighting like punching or kicking or screaming, but involve moral dilemmas, psychological manipulation, or clashes with an oppressive system, possibly exploited by that system. So if you interpret her name as more than just a coincidence, it offers an alternative perspective on her past. For example, what if her father sold her to a Celestial Dragon family, either because he was forced to do so, wanted to avoid punishment, or aimed to gain political favor? And this could explain or reconcile the two contrasting worlds we see her in, showing how she might have been pulled into an oppressive environment similar to how other characters we discussed were, through grooming, enslavement, or marriage. Either way, if I were a parent, in the words of Brooke, I'd rather die than live without honor. If that's what happened, then the identity she carries now might not be a reflection of who she is, but what someone in power needed her to be. So if Gunko wasn't born into a Celestial Dragon family, but still ended up with their name and status, the next question becomes, why? Because that's where One Piece's pattern of forced identity comes back into play. One Piece also shows how the very names and roles people are given can be a part of the weaponization, and the Celestial Dragons have a long history of this. Take the hoof of the Soaring Dragon brand. When enslaved by a Celestial Dragon, humans lose their freedom and they are physically marked with the hoof of the Soaring Dragon symbol. The brand shows that they are no longer considered human, they're just an object, a possession with their owner's stamp. Historically, in real world, enslaved people were stripped of their original names and given new ones by their owners, often adopting their oppressor's family name. And this made record-keeping easier and ownership clear, a reminder that the person belonged to somebody else. So what if Gunko's name, Manmeyer, isn't her family name by blood, but a name she was assigned? Because in One Piece, names do carry power. They can be used to elevate or erase people. Think about the 20 kings who created the world government. After toppling the ancient kingdom, they didn't just form a new political structure, they crowned themselves as gods, celestial dragons. They rebranded their entire legacy, rewriting history so they'd be the ones remembered as divine rulers instead of usurpers. That same logic could apply to Gunko, because if she was claimed by Celestial Dragon family and turned into a tool for their agenda, her current status might just be that. A name was given to conceal her origins and mold her into the image the system required her to portray. Suppressing her memories of her past life would just be the icing on the cake, but the kind of icing that causes explosive diarrhea and death. And if we look at how One Piece handles names more broadly, take Big Mom. Her children all carry the Charlotte last name, her family name, not their father's. And knowing Big Mom, it's definitely a power move, a way to claim total ownership over their identities from birth. And she's used that brand to organize her children like a military catalog. Their existence is measured by how well they serve the Empire. And in that way, Big Mom mirrors the world government more than she probably realizes. The many questions about Gunko's character suggest that there is a reason Oda emphasizes the mystery of her past. Oda sometimes withholds information not to avoid an emotional payoff, but to shift how you perceive a character once their role becomes clear. To me, it feels like Gunko is being set up for something, and the mystery around her past isn't just about keeping fans guessing, it's about setting up a narrative reversal. This means her character arc in Elbaf might focus on whether she even remembers who she was before the system affected her, and on figuring out what the world government did, or rather what Imu did to erase her memories and shape her into who she is now. At this point, debating nature versus nurture with Gunko is like arguing about who programmed the Terminator while it's actively crushing us. She's basically Oda's way of saying, y'all seeing this shit? About the whole corrupt system. Gunko is just the latest model in Oda's tragic Build-A-Bear Workshop of Child Soldiers collection. Kuma was the prototype, and she's the new iPhone 100 with built-in suppressed PTSD. And in that mirror, we start asking ourselves, how many of these so-called gods out there were actually just victims, changed and reshaped until their old selves didn't even matter anymore? Because in One Piece, the scariest power isn't a devil fruit or haki, it's the ability to rewrite a person's story and force society to choke on a metric ton of propaganda. And that's exactly what I explore in my theory on Emu's devil fruit, where I analyze how Davy Jones' myth and the fear surrounding it might have been turned into a mythical zone fruit, which you can watch right now.
Dish you, I miss you. You know that I hit you like I'm on your ID. I'm aiming the album to fall off. It's pretty ironic. Shit ain't no